I promise I'll only pick on the people in the back, so you can come up front.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. It's great to have such a collection of WCD, Visit Milwaukee, Levy, CTI, all together. It's could be a great morning, so thank you all for joining us. Before we start with the program, I wanted to share something that we've been working on for the past couple of months, and may not be news to some of you, but probably to a lot of you. Back in January, we announced that we, the WCD, were going to offer, and we're offering, a gala giveaway. It was a promotion that was opened up to 501c3 not-for-profit organizations to send to us information on their organization, what they do for the community, whether or not they have hosted a gala or not before, and the importance of being awarded a gala giveaway, what it would do to their organization. The giveaway is comprised of a number of different components. Use of the new rooftop ballroom, rent-free, 500-person, 3-course plated meal catered by Levy, 4 bottles of wine per table, a credit for AV purposes, as well as, and probably as important to us as an organization, the donation of 40 man-hours implemented by WCD staff towards the not-for-profit organization's cause. 3 weeks ago, Megan Setman, Sarah, and I, along with Charlie, went out and after having gone through all the different applications, which, by the way, we weren't sure what to expect, we were overwhelmed by the number of recipients. 176 organizations responded, which Megan, Sarah, and I reviewed all of the applications independently and gave our own scoring, came together, and came up with, surprisingly, and you'll hear a little bit about this in the video we're going to show, I think it's the first time Sarah, Megan, and I, in the 5 years we've worked together, have ever agreed on the same thing. But we came up with a unanimous selection of an organization that you'll see in a moment. But that was awarded 2.5 weeks ago. We announced it first thing this morning. It's been a pretty well-guarded secret. We worked with a media partner yesterday, recorded something that they ran this morning on the news. If you haven't taken a look at it, go to TMJ's website. A really, really great feature piece that ran this morning. But what I'd like to share with you is a video that Sarah arranged to have shot and produced to memorialize the awarding of our 2024 Gala giveaway winner. It's a brief video. Take a look at it, and I hope you can enjoy it and share in the how humbled we are looking in comparison to what not-for-profit organizations do, but also get energized by something that we're doing to make sure we're more engaged with the community than we've ever been before. So, take a look.
When my team first approached me about a gala giveaway, I paused. And as I thought about it, and thought about the impact it could have to the community in making 501c3 not-profit organizations, make them aware that there'd be an opportunity for them to not only have an event that would be profitable for them and help them towards their own fundraising goals, but could also create great awareness of what we believe will be a great facility in downtown Milwaukee.
I'm nervous. I have like butterflies in my stomach. I'm excited.
Are you excited?
Ultimately, we ended up grading and having a very clear winner, and I cannot wait to reveal who it is.
I think it may be the first time the three of us have ever really agreed on anything. All three of us. It's just like, wow.
People were like, is the district really giving away a gala? Is that real? Did I see that? And not only are we giving away, it's valued at $50,000.
We're changing an organization here.
Right here.
We're here. Let's do it. Let's do it.
With the expansion of the Baird Center coming online May of 2024, we really wanted to open the doors so the community knew who we were.
Can you give us your honest reaction to the fact that we're telling you right now that we've awarded the 2024 Gala giveaway to your organization?
No.
Here to tell you, you are the recipients of the 2024 Gala giveaway.
Oh my God, we just won the Gala giveaway.
Oh my goodness.
Our goal is to bring everyone together and just celebrate autism and try to make it the best life possible for the loved ones and also those that are affected by autism. The connection is you.
So we are a small but mighty organization. What this is going to do for us as an organization, we are able to provide so many services back to our families, our individuals, our community. Thank you. All I can say is thank you.
You guys, we've got this. It's going to be unbelievable. It is unusual for a convention center to be relevant to the city's residents. We're out to change that. We want to make sure that the Baird Center is known, it is a source of pride, and one simple way for us to do that is standing up for all of the nonprofits in southeastern Wisconsin who are moving mountains every day and making sure that they know we are here to support them. We understand their objectives. We will execute their event flawlessly. We will give their guests a second to none experience.
Be bold, be proud, be experience obsessed. And that, as much as anything, is one of our measures of success of this Gala giveaway.
That's not the first time that I've seen this. And every time I see it, I've gotten the same reaction. And that's such an overwhelming sense of pride. Those of you who've been here for a while will remember that in the fall of 2018, we did our first ever employee engagement survey. And there were a number of things that were brought to our attention as an organization where we were falling really short. Communication was one of them, trust, one of them. But also, many of the people who sent responses indicated that they wanted our organization to be an organization that they would be proud to work for and that was relevant. And I really am continue to be taken by Sarah's comments in the video about it's unusual for a convention center to be relevant. That hit us in 2018, and we've been very active in trying to be relevant. And the convention center expansion is not only an opportunity for us to be able to do more shows and bigger shows, but it's also been an opportunity for us as an organization to be the caterpillar that's gone into this cocoon and now coming out as this beautiful butterfly. Doing this event with Gala Giveaway is really connecting us with the community. And I don't want to say it's the start, it's certainly not the end. The development of BPX came out of that employee engagement survey. And I think part of what Nyla's trying to do with this training and future training sessions is to make sure that, first off, we're all reading the same script as far as how we live and breathe our professional and personal lives being part of the district, but also taking BPX and integrating it into everything we do, and specifically writing, whether it's an internal communication or an external communication. How you present yourself is how you're presenting our organization. So not only is it important that we present our organization professionally, but also we convey in the same tone in the written form as we do in the spoken word, which is be bold, be proud, be experience obsessed. We communicate with that same type of emphasis and style and thoroughness and engagement. And I'm hopeful that through today's program, and it's just another way for us to be more informed and be better at integrating BPX into the totality of what working for us and with us is all about. So without further ado, it's a great event with a Gala giveaway. More to come on that. I bring up Nyla Tuxon to get us started today.
All
right, thanks, Marty. Good morning, good morning. Is everybody up? We woke, we're excited for the, woo, yay. That was great. I'm all emotional here this morning, so thanks, Marty and Sarah and Megan. That is really great. This is a great organization, and it makes me proud to work here at WCD. So I'm gonna come up with a song. We gotta come up with a song, WCD. We're gonna do that. So anyway, but let me get started here. So thank you, good morning. I'm so glad you all are here today. You could join us. I really have the pleasure of introducing our presenter for our writing workshop today, Lori Cunningham. So a bit about Lori. Lori spent 10 years as a newspaper reporter in Paterson, New Jersey and Miami, Florida, before moving to Chicago to become an editor at Crane's Chicago Business. That's where she spent 4 years in the feature section. She joined Baker McKenzie, a global law firm, in 2010 and spent 8 years as an editor in the marketing department. 2018, she joined a boutique content development firm to write thought leadership for big consulting firms such as McKinsey and Deloitte. Now Lori is out on her own and conducting writing workshops for professional service firms and businesses like ours. So I am excited for her content and her presentation today. So please welcome Lori Cunningham.
Thank you so much. I just have to get all my supplies together. Excuse me. Grab the clicker. Sorry. So I'm so excited to be here today and to share with you some of my writing knowledge. Before we get started, I know everybody has a pen and paper. We've made sure of that. We're also going to take a quiz about 45 minutes in, so you all have that at your desk. And then you'll also find a handout that that summarizes the top 5 writing tips that I'm just about to share with you that you can put at your desk to remind you of what you've learned here today. I also want to say that you will have access to the slides as well as a resource list and a few other materials. You'll get a link to a Google folder that will have everything in it. So no need to take copious notes unless that's what helps you learn. I know it helps me. And this is an interactive presentation, so if you're an introvert, today's not your day to be an introvert. Everybody needs to share. So I'd like to start with a poll just to see where we are. And how would you rate yourself as a writer on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the very best? How many, and I would like to see a show of hands, and don't worry, we're all friends here, we all have our weaknesses and our strengths. How many of you would say, yeah, I could use a lot of work on my writing? Is there anybody? Okay. What about a 2? You get by. Anybody a 2? Oh, we got some confident, good writers, okay. What about a 3? Okay, that's where we fall, all right. A 4, anybody? Oh, I like it. Anybody Pulitzer Prize winning, awards are in your future? Anybody a 5? All right, well the good news is that wherever you are on the spectrum, there's always room for improvement. So my first question to you is, why do you want to be a better writer? Because if we know our why, then we're much more motivated to actually take the actions that it requires to change. So I know for myself, having had the opportunity to write for newspapers and magazines, and also, not to mention the newsletter for my kids' school, that you can really build community with writing. And the more engaging my writing is, the better community that I can build. So that's my reason for wanting to continue to get better at writing. But think about for yourself. What's your reason? Does anybody want to share why they might want to improve their writing? Sure, go ahead. To clear up misunderstandings that might arise. Anyone else? Sure. Better deal with customers. Anyone over here? Sure, Marty. To be persuasive. These are some great reasons. And There are a lot of reasons people want to be a better writer, and the first one is greater credibility, because I don't care how smart you are, how personable you are, how put together you are, if you've got typos, grammatical errors, your formatting is really, really wonky when you send something out, people are going to make assumptions about you that you might not like. So putting some time into your writing and making sure it's very polished, you're presenting yourself on the page, and so you come across with a better impression. The second one is, like you said, less back and forth. I mean, who here would like more email? No? Okay. Well, how about getting it right the first time and being really clear about what you want or what you need so you don't have to go back and forth 100 times? Evidence of clear thinking. I had an editor once when I was writing for a newspaper where he would say, clear writing is clear thinking. So if I had a notebook just filled with these story ideas or all the facts in a story, and I was struggling to write the story, he'd say, it's because your thinking's not clear. You don't know what you want to say. So he would say, all right, take a step back, let's talk through it, and then get to writing. And so if you can write very clearly, you will get a reputation as someone who thinks clearly. And guess what? That's very valuable in the workplace. Get what you want. I don't know about you, but every company I've ever worked for, and when I say, oh, I'd really like to go to this conference, or can I have more resources or greater support, they say, write the business case. So the better you are at writing that business case, the more likely you are to get that. Courtesy and respect. Business is about relationships. And if you're evasive or curt or sloppy, that says something about how you perceive the other person, or the time that you put into something shows that you have a lot of respect for the other person. So especially in this day and age when everybody's texting and moving really fast, if you take just that extra couple moments to make sure that it's polished, you will stand out. Career advancement. Strong communication skills are like one of the top things that leaders need, including written skills. So if you want that promotion, it's worth putting a little bit of time into your writing. So how do you do this? How do you make the changes? Well, the first thing is personal investment. That's why I asked you about your why. Because I could stand here all day long and give you the world's greatest writing tips, but if you don't want to use them or you don't want to change, then it's not worth a lot. The right teachers. So many of us were scarred by, sixth grade English or high school essay class. And writing rules evolve over the years. And so you want to make sure that you are not just relying on things you learned years ago. You want to stay up on the latest writing etiquette, writing trends. And I'm going to help you do that. I have a resource list that you can look at, which includes a blog that I write. Openness to feedback. None of us like to hear, oh, you're almost there. It's like, oh, really? Oh, no, I don't want to go back and do this again. But when you're learning something, it's important to be open to that and to doing something differently. You're also going to feel uncomfortable. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do is give up a lot of adverbs and adjectives. And when you do that, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I feel naked. This email is way too short. And are you sure? And that is just part of the process. Support and reinforcement. None of us change without having support from our friends. That's how we get by, right? So one thing I would recommend is after this workshop, partner up with somebody who also took the workshop and help each other with your writing, review each other's work and give each other feedback. And practice. This is one of my very favorite quotes from a man you might recognize, Stephen King, one of the most prolific writers in the history of writing. And he says, if you want to be a writer, you've got to read a lot and write a lot. There's no way around these two things. And one thing I want to say about reading and why it's so important is that because we don't just read with our eyes, we read with our ears. We hear the rhythm of the sentences. And so one thing that I've heard a lot about my writing is that when I write a news story or I write a personal essay, people say, oh, your dialogue is so natural. It really sounds like how people write. Well, that's not all me. I credit that to Judy Blume because I read all of her books when I was growing up. And multiple times, and she, of anybody, knows how kids talk, and she wrote it the real way. And I pick that up. I pick up the rhythm. You're unconsciously picking up good writing. So here are some of the things that you write at work. Emails to each other, emails to your customers, your partners, your planners, sponsors, vendors, letters, memos. Is there anything I'm missing, or is this kind of the bulk of what you write at work? Okay. So one thing, a recent development, is that your marketing and communications team has come up with a style guide to help you, guide you in having a uniform way of writing. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more later in the presentation. But just to start out, there's a certain tone that, as an organization, your leaders would like you to strike. And the words that describe that tone are succinct, cheerful, confident, hospitable, and professional. You know, easy, right? So how do you do that? Well, I recommend using the Goldilocks solution. Remember Goldilocks? She wanted porridge that was hot but not too hot, a bed that was warm, a bed that was soft but not too soft, chair that was small but not too small. Well, that's the same balance that you're trying to strike in your writing. You want to be brief, but not so brief that you leave out important information and nobody knows what you're talking about. You want to be friendly, but not too friendly, so you got to watch those exclamation points. People like those a lot, and pack your paragraphs full of those. Or share too much personal information. Comprehensive, but not so comprehensive that someone opens your emails like, oh God, I'm reading this later. You want to be just right. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is habits. We all have habits, right? Some of us might floss or go to bed at a decent hour. And, you know, we also drink too much beer, eat a lot of pizza, get food on our shirt like this guy. And writing is also a habit. We all get into patterns of how we express ourselves. We use the same phrases over and over again. We start emails the same way. And so some of those are good and some of those are not so good. So here are some of the habits that get in the way, get between you and good writing. And that is forgetting your audience, wordiness, using too much jargon, vague, flowery language, and burying your request or conclusion. So what does this add up to? The number one sin in writing: boring your audience. What do you do when you're reading something and it's boring? This is not a rhetorical question, you can answer. Stop, skip, all of that. What about if it's confusing or like really long? What do you do then? Delete. I like that, yes. So the whole point of writing something is so that someone reads it, right? So if you're not writing it in a way that they want to read it, it just defeats the whole purpose. So what do readers want? They want the bottom line, clear direction, plain language, and what's in it for them. So this leads me to my top 5 writing tips. So when I was working at the global law firm that Nyla mentioned, we sent out a ton of client communications. And one of those communications was called a client alert. And a client alert was when there was ever a legal development, like there was a case or a new law or new policy that was going to affect clients. The lawyers would write something up, like a summary, and send it out to thousands of people. And so our chief marketing officer was getting some complaints about these client alerts because they were too long, there was so much jargon and acronyms, and they weren't even that helpful. So he came to me and said, could you please read a lot of these client alerts and come up with some recommendations? So I read these, and I started noticing some patterns in the writing, some things that were consistently happening that made them not as good as they could be. And so that's what led to my top 5 writing tips. I came up with the writing tips because if you do these 5 things, you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I saw. So here they are. Number 1, get to the point. Number 2, use active voice. Number 3, keep it short. Number 4, know your audience. And number 5, be specific. So now we're going to go through each one of these. Tip number 1, get to the point. Why do we need to get to the point? Well, I'm sure you've noticed that we are now living in the technology age, and we are all bombarded with more information than ever in the history of information. A lot of people call it drinking from a fire hose. And so to stand out among all that noise takes even more work. And not to mention that a lot of times we're reading everything on tiny little screens. So if your main point or your main request is like 4 paragraphs down, people are not going to find it. And you don't want to make people do the work to understand what you're trying to say, because they won't do it. They'll do what we talked about. They'll stop, they'll delete. So how do you do that? How do you get to the point? Well, a lot of us were taught in school to write essays, to start with a background, then talk about the different aspects of the topic, and then get to the conclusion or the main point. But as journalists, we're taught to flip that. We're taught what's called the inverted pyramid. And what you do with the inverted pyramid is you put the most important information first when you're telling a story, the who, what, where, when, why, and then you go down into the lesser details. Because the problem with how we learned how to write in school is that it might have gotten you an A, but it doesn't really work for internal or external communications. This is a very logical way to receive information, and it allows people to get the main point just reading the first couple paragraphs, and if they want to know more, they can read more. So here's an invitation that went out. The marketing team of the law firm that I work for sent this out, and I want to give you a moment to read it. And as you read it, I want you to think about, what is the news? What are they trying to tell their audience? What's the news? They've posted a webinar and the slides. But we got a whole lot of words going on to tell people that. So here I've underlined some of the words that kind of get in the way of the main point. You've got on behalf of, which we often call throat clearing. You know, you're not getting to the point. You've got the date. You've got that it's the 4th session in the series, and you've got some commentary about what people thought. You've got a whole lot going on, when here I rewrote it with the who, what, where, when, why. Thank you for your interest in our webinar, the name of the webinar. If you missed the session or would like to view it again, here's the webinar recording and slide deck. To the point and polite. Tip number 2, use active voice. So this is as much of an English teacher as I'm going to get in this presentation, so don't worry. And if you don't know what active or passive voice is, you are not alone. Don't worry. So I'm going to talk a little bit about passive voice first. Passive voice is everywhere in business writing, and it's what makes sentences extra long and often makes your writing confusing, and we're going to talk about why. So what is active voice? I ate the banana. It is a sentence that has a clear subject, I, verb, ate, banana, object. When you put it in passive voice, the banana was eaten by me. Now that's not grammatically incorrect, but you've now got a longer sentence. And then what happens is a lot of people drop that last part. The banana was eaten. And now you have no idea who ate the banana, which is often what happens in my house, but that's a different story. So here we're going to take some sentences in passive voice and turn them into active voice. The financial plan is supported by political and business leaders as an investment in economic growth. Who is the subject of the sentence? Who is taking the action? And again, feel free to call it out. The business leaders? Right. So the subject of the sentence is the political and business leaders. So you want to start with them. Political and business leaders support the financial plan as an investment in economic growth. Notice how the sentence just got shorter and you've got a stronger verb. And when I say stronger verb, I just mean it's one clear word instead of is supported, which is like a passive form of to be, the verb to be, which again is English teacher, so I'm going to stop. So here we have another one. Gilbane Smith's construction management team was tasked with identifying safety risks on the job site. Who's the subject of the sentence? Who's taking the action? It's not Gilbane Smith. The action was acted upon them. So here's the problem with passive voice. We have no idea who tasked them with doing this, right? So I don't know who's in charge of telling them what to do, so I just came up with something. The WCD Expansion Committee tasked them with doing that. So now that it's an active voice, it's very clear who is doing what. So we're going to take another example with there are. In today's post-pandemic environment, there are numerous challenges operating the Baird Center. There are is a very sneaky form of passive voice. And when I was in journalism school, I had a professor who said that she forbade us from ever starting a sentence with there are. And she said, because it's going to force you to find a stronger verb. And strong writing has a lot to do with strong verbs. And so we said, okay. And so she was right. So here, who operates the Baird Center? Who's the subject of the sentence? It's not in the sentence, I'll tell you that. Who does? Yep. In today's post-pandemic environment, WCD leaders face numerous challenges operating the Baird Center. Now we know who we're talking about. So one thing I want to say about passive voice is it's not grammatically incorrect. It's okay to use it. The problem is that people use it so much, and it makes sentences longer, and it makes things less clear. That's why a lot of professional writers will tell you, use active voice, and you'll say, well, what does that even mean? So hopefully you have a better idea now. So there are a couple instances where it's okay to use passive voice. Some examples are when you don't know who took the action, or when the action is way more important than who did the action. So for instance, if I came into work and said, my car was stolen yesterday, okay, that's in passive voice. But who stole my car? It would sound crazy if I said, thieves stole my car yesterday. So then also with the president was sworn in today, well, you could think about, okay, who swears in the president? Okay, that's probably the Chief Justice. So you could change it to say Chief Justice Roberts swore in the president on Monday, but that's not really what the news is. How many people are familiar with this book? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So if you ever became interested in writing, this is like the first book anybody will recommend that you read. And the good news is that it's short. And another thing that it is very old. And it's written by E.B. White, who you might know, he's most famous for writing Charlotte's Web. So E.B. White went to college in the 1920s at Cornell, and he had an English professor who was a stickler for language, and his name was Professor Strunk. And Professor Strunk, as E.B. White tells it, was so passionate about omitting needless words, meaning adverbs and adjectives, that he would just grab his lapels and lean over the podium and practically spit on the students and say, omit needless words. And so what E.B. White did was he took a lot of the lessons that he had learned in that class and he put them together in this little book. And one of the quotes from Professor Strunk sums up why it can be a problem to use too many flowery phrases in your writing. Vigorous writing is concise. A sentence should contain no unnecessary words, a paragraph no unnecessary sentences. For the same reason that a drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine no unnecessary parts. This requires not that the writer make all his sentences short or that he avoid all detail and treat his subject only in outline, but that every word tell. Professor Strunk was a big fan of every word that's in a sentence needs to be doing some work. If it's not, get it out. So how do you do that? How do you omit needless words? Well, you avoid adverbs and adjectives, you trim wordiness, you use short sentences, and you watch redundancy. So these are some of the unnecessary words and phrases. A lot of people call them, these are the needless words that Professor Strunk was talking about. They're also called hedging words. And the secret about these words is if you take them out of your sentences, you will not be missing anything, and actually your sentences will get stronger. So how many of you recognize some of these words? Like, oh yeah, that one's my favorite. I use that a lot. I know for me, I use very a lot, actually a lot, so I have to watch that with myself. So here's how a sentence can get stronger when we don't use these words. This should be relatively straightforward. Well, it's either straightforward or it's not. She is currently the vice president of marketing at WCD. Well, is a present tense verb that tells you this is what she is doing right now, so you don't need currently. And here's the mission statement of WCD. It's to maintain and continuously build our reputation in the convention, entertainment, and supporting events industry. Well, I would argue you don't need continuously because build is already a present tense verb. It tells you that this is what we do every day. So here I switched it, I took it out, that the mission is to maintain and build our reputation in these industries. But then to me, that was a little bit backwards, because in my mind, you build something and then you maintain it. So I just switched it around. The mission of the WCD is to build and maintain our reputation in the convention, entertainment, and sporting events industry. Now it's confident and it's right to the point. Here's one more example. It was an extremely tough job to actually put the building together in such a tight area. It was a tough job to put the building together in such a tight area. Notice how much shorter the sentence just got. Did we lose any meaning or anything important? The WCD relentlessly seizes any opportunity to improve every experience, even if it means taking risks or thinking unconventionally. So seize is a very strong verb, and it already implies action. I mean, how many of us gently seize something or half-heartedly seize something? So here, it's meant for emphasis, but it's a little bit of overkill. So that's why sometimes you really got to be careful about these. Then the WCD seizes any opportunity, which is very strong in and of itself. Use simple words and phrases. So George Orwell, who was best known for writing Animal Farm, he would say, never use a long word where a short one will do. And this is what he's talking about. A lot of us think that if we use these kind of fancy phrases in our professional lives, that then we sound more professional or more intelligent or something like that. But again, a lot of times you end up with just wordy prose that people don't want to read, or it just sounds kind of stilted. So here we're going to take the opportunity to use simpler words and to watch redundancy. So we provide the most effective use of space for our clients by utilizing the collective talents of all WCD employees. What's one word that we could use, that we could replace the most effective with? Can anyone think of? It's a 4-letter word. Best. Yep. What about utilize? Is there a simpler way to say that? Using. And then collective and all mean the same thing. It's redundant. We provide the best use of space for our clients by using the collective talents of WCD employees. Or you could do it the other way. We provide the best use of space for our clients using the talents of all WCD employees. By omitting needless words, your message will be clearer, you will sound more confident, you will waste less time, and you're more likely to get a response if you're looking for one. But again, like I said, at the beginning, it's going to feel uncomfortable because this is how you always do it. This is our mission statement. This is what we always say. So that is part of the process. And so when you feel uncomfortable because you're changing, just know you're right where you need to be. Tip number 4, know your audience. This is really important in writing. Whenever you're writing something, you want to think, who am I writing this for? Because that will determine your tone, and it will also determine what information you provide and which you take out. So let's say you're going to write an invitation to a webinar. You work for a law firm, and the questions you'd want to ask yourself before you write that description and the name of the webinar is, who am I writing this for? What do they need to know? What do they need to do? And most importantly, what's in it for them? Otherwise, you end up with event titles like this: 16th Annual International Tax and Trust Training Course, Boot Camp Training Course. Do you have any idea who should go to these events? I don't. And especially if you're sending this out to get people to register, they don't even know it's for them. So it can become a big problem. So it's an easy fix. Whenever you can, call out your audience in the title or the headline of what you're writing. So now, if I'm a wealth management professional, I know that these trainings are for me. It's also really important to, whenever you're describing something or trying to get somebody to do something, to think about what's in it for them. In marketing, they call it WIFM, which is an acronym for What's in it for me. So here we have an invitation to a seminar about Latin American labor and employment law. And I'll give you a second to read it. So I know you don't work for a law firm, but I'm sure you've seen some writing like this, like, trying to invite you to things. Like it has a familiarity to it, because this is often how we write these kinds of things. So if someone goes to this seminar, what's in it for them? What are they going to learn? Well, I could probably read it a few times and figure that out. But what I like to do is I like to call it out in whatever I'm writing. So I try to write kind of a hook, what I call it, like at the beginning, like worried about new employment compliance law, trying to figure out how to reduce labor costs, kind of trying to get somebody's attention, but it's all focused on them and what their concerns are. And then I just spell out, this is what you're going to learn if you come to this seminar. And you can use this for meetings. Let's say you're trying to get a whole bunch of people to come to a meeting to brainstorm about something. Try to think about why would they want to come instead of why do I want them to come. Also, in terms of knowing your audience, one thing that I learned from talking to some of your leaders are that you yourself are a WCD employee. That's not often what your customers or clients know you as. So you want to be really careful in terms of who you're talking to. Internally, yes, your WCD, you can throw that around all you want. But when talking to vendors or planners or sponsors and that kind of thing, you really want to talk about the venue, because that's what they know the district for. So before we get on to tip number 5, I'd like you to read these and tell me, which of the statements do you find more compelling, A or B? How many people like A better? Okay. How many prefer B? Why? Why did you like B better? It had statistics, okay? Anyone else want to share why they liked B? I actually kind of find it hilarious that 90% of Americans rate themselves as above average drivers. It's a real statistic. Yes, so here, rule number 5 is to be specific. We make so many blanket claims all the time. Every business does this, and we don't back it up with anything. And the problem is that we as consumers are bombarded with these messages. It's like, if you walk around New York, every bodega's got the world's best coffee, right? Or, this skin cream guaranteed to make you look 12 again, or most fuel-efficient car. And so we screen all that out because it's just noise until somebody gives us a statistic that gets our attention. So I show you how to use numbers to do that. Here's how you would use examples. So here are some statements from a law firm website, and I'm sure you have similar ones on your website. Our banking and finance lawyers helps clients simplify complexity wherever they execute transactions. Well, really? How so? For decades, our infrastructure lawyers have advised clients on some of the largest, most significant projects in the world, but they're so significant, we're not going to tell you what any of them are. So, like what? Give me an example. We are widely recognized for our work on multi-jurisdictional pioneering transactions. That's a pretty big claim, so I think I'd like you to prove it. So here's how you would do that. You would back it up with an example. So when I went back to the lawyers and said, okay, so what are some of these multi-jurisdictional pioneering transactions? This is what I got, such as developing a structure that enabled the first domestic securitization of consumer loans in Russia. I don't even know what that means, but I'm sure that if I needed a multi-jurisdictional pioneering transaction, that I would know what this means, and now I know that you do what I need, and I'm more likely to trust you and hire you. So I want to take a moment just before I go on and see if, does anyone have any questions up to now? Okay, great. Because now we're going to talk about proofreading. So exciting. Okay, so whenever I talk about proofreading, it's like talking about eating your vegetables, right? We all want to eat dessert. We all want to say, oh my gosh, I just wrote this thing. I just want to send this off. I am not looking at it one more time. Well, it behooves you to do that. And not only that, I'm going to teach you a new way to proofread. Most people proofread by running spell check, and then they think, done, and then they send it off. Well, the way that I recommend you proofread any important email or document is to print it out, because your eye will miss things on the screen, and then go through it and think about it from the vantage point of the top 5 writing tips. And you will be so surprised at what you notice. You'll say, uh-oh, my main point is in paragraph 3. Or what am I doing with all these adverbs and adjectives in paragraph 2? I don't even need paragraph 4. That's extraneous. So it is your second opportunity to polish what you've just done. And then once you've done that, then you're good to go. Then you're good to send. So a tool that I recommend wholeheartedly is Grammarly. How many people are familiar with Grammarly? Have you heard of it? How many of you use it? Okay, great. So Grammarly and I have kind of a tortured history, because when I was giving this workshop about maybe 15 years ago, I had a lovely gentleman come up to me and he said, well, you know, there's this software that does everything that you're talking about in your workshop. And I was like, oh, well, I don't need that. Like, I'm an expert. And then a few years pass, and a good friend of mine started using it. He's an excellent writer, excellent editor, and he was raving about it. And I thought, okay, fine. If Tim likes it, I will start using it. And oh my gosh, I would not live without it now. The good news about Grammarly is once you have a subscription, and I would recommend looking into it as departments or whoever it feels applicable for, or just get your own. It's like $100 a year, and it's worth that. Because what it does, it uses AI. It doesn't just catch spelling errors and grammatical errors, but it also flags adverbs and adjectives when you're writing in passive voice, and it even tells you when there are monotonous paragraphs. This thing tells you when you're being boring. So it's a really helpful tool, but it is a tool. So whenever I use it, I don't just do whatever it says and accept all the changes. I go through them one by one and I say, well, actually, I wanted to use actually in this sentence. Or I wanted this sentence in passive voice. You are still the writer, not AI, so you want to make sure that you don't just wholeheartedly take its changes. Because just like spell check, sometimes it's just wrong. Like, that's just not the way it should be. So the really helpful thing about Grammarly is it raises awareness. That's what I love about it most. So I wanted to give you a few email tips because we write so much email. Number 1, put your question or request in the subject line, get to the point, and keep it short. So putting your question or request in the subject line. So going back to the law firm I told you that I worked for, I wrote a lot of reports with the lawyers. And that meant I had to interview them, and then I had to write something up, and then they had to review it. Well, lawyers are pretty busy, and they are slaves to the billable hour. Like, they're supposed to be making money every minute that they're in their chair, right? So it's not easy to get their attention. So I tried a bunch of things to get their attention, and these seem to work. So if I wanted to interview them, just in the subject line, interview for M&A report, call to discuss your comments. I also found it was really helpful to put the deadline right into the subject line because everybody works to deadline. Tip number 2, get to the point. That's really important here. So here is an email that the marketing team sent to the partners, and I'm going to give you a moment to read it. And as you read it, think about what the call to action is, what the marketing team wants the partners to do. Has anybody found what they want the recipients to do? Do what? Sorry? Invite clients, yeah. That's one of them. There's one more. Save the date. So they want a couple things, but it's so buried that you really have to read it closely to know what you're supposed to do, which makes it less likely that they'll, number 1, read it, and number 2, do it. So here I just rewrote it. Inverted pyramid, who, what, where, when, why. And then I had my call to action bolded with a deadline, and then save the date with bullets. Now you can skim it and take action much more quickly than the old version. Keep it short. We all want to sound friendly or helpful or hospitable, especially for the industry that you're in, but it can lead to these pretty complicated sentences like, if we can be of additional assistance with your plan to attend, or if your plans change as such that you're no longer able to join us, please update your RSVP directly through our registration survey or contact Jane at this really long email address that I'm going to give you. You can simply say, for additional assistance, contact Jane Smith, hot link to her email. If your plans change, please update your RSVP through our registration survey. So you have a lot of words just getting in the way of trying to help someone. Email sign-offs. So a lot of times people ask me, like, what's the best way to sign off on my email at work? And you can find a lot of advice on the internet, but the one that I liked was this 57 ways to sign off on an email by Susan Adams. She's a Forbes business editor. So what she did is she went through all the different ways that people sign off and kind of gave some commentary on them. And so basically the one she likes best, or she finds is used the most widely, is best. And then if you want to be a little more formal, best regards. She also says it's fine to use thanks. If you want to be cheerful, you could say thanks, exclamation point. And if you want to be cheerful and formal, you can say thank you with an exclamation point. She also says it can seem a little terse just to put your name at the bottom, but that's usually like when you don't know this person and they're a prospect or something like that, then you might want to be a little more formal. But after that, it's perfectly fine just to sign with your name. So like I mentioned before, the marketing and communications team has written a style guide, which you'll get later this week. And I just wanted to take a moment just to familiarize you with a little bit of what is in store. So the first thing is what is a style guide? Well, unfortunately, it has nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with writing. It's a reference guide for how your company uses spelling, punctuation, capitalization, titles, and branded words and phrases. And the best known one is the one by the Associated Press, the AP style book. There's also the Chicago Manual of Style. Academics has its own style guide. Different industries have different ways that they want people to write. And these originated out of newsrooms, because if you could only imagine if the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, like one day all the words in the headlines were capitalized, the next day they weren't. It's just to create a sense of consistency. But first, let's talk about the Oxford comma. What is the Oxford comma? Well, here it is. She went to the store to buy oranges, comma, apples, comma, and bananas. This is the sentence without the Oxford comma. You have just oranges, comma, apples, and bananas. There, believe it or not, there are vicious debates over the Oxford comma and whether or not you should use the Oxford comma. People who like the Oxford comma say it's consistent, and once your list gets really long, or your sentences that are in the list get really long, it's really helpful. But there are purists who say, are you kidding me? I already have and. Why do I need another comma? It's already there. So here's a reason we need a style guide, because guess what? Neither one is wrong. It's just a matter of how you as an organization want to do it. So your organization has gone with no Oxford comma. I'm really sorry for those who like the Oxford comma. Yes. I will say that AP style is no Oxford comma. So a lot of times reporters, people who used to be reporters, don't like the Oxford comma. They think it's a little too fancy. And Grammarly, by the way, will put in the Oxford comma, so you're gonna have to take those out every time. Maybe you could disable that function, I'm not sure. So why should you use your style guide? Well, it's really important to be consistent. If you're writing an email and you're not using the Oxford comma in the first paragraph, but then you are in the second paragraph, it looks like you don't know how to use commas. Then as an organization, if she's using the Oxford comma, I'm not using the Oxford comma. I mean, and a comma is a small thing, right? But once it gets into capitalization or abbreviation or how you do your marketing slogans, it becomes a bigger issue. But it just makes it look like you just don't have your act together. So it makes you look more professional to have a style guide and follow the style guide. And guess what? It actually makes your life easier. You don't have to sit there just, wait, do I abbreviate Avenue or do I spell it out? Oh, I know, I could look in the style guide. So it's there to make your life easier. And a tip is that once you start using the style guide, if you have more questions, the marketing and communications team is happy to help you. And even better, if you want them to review something to make sure that it complies, they're happy to do that. That's how important it is to present a united front. So here are some of the things you're going to find in the style guide. So WCD, it's always capitalized, and you want to spell it out in headlines and on first reference. So here's an example. The Wisconsin Center District owns the Baird Center and the UW Milwaukee Panther Arena. So you want to spell it out the first time. You wouldn't just say the WCD, because some people won't even know what you're talking about. The second time, they're going to get it. They'll see, oh, that refers to that. Yeah. Okay, that's a really good question. So, what does your style guide say? No? Sorry. Sometimes sometimes what people do is they'll write Wisconsin Center District, brackets, WCD, and then on second reference. Is that how you do it? Okay. So that's how you will do it. Yeah. But sometimes, like AP style, is that you don't do that. It's looked as like, well, they're not stupid. They can see that that relates to that. However, sometimes the acronym gets farther and farther away from the original, or people like to just know for sure this is what you're talking about. So again, it's not wrong or right. It's which one your organization wants to do. What lawyers do, and this actually kind of drives me crazy, is they put brackets after they spell it out, and they put them in quotation marks. I'm like, okay, thanks. I really needed that. So BPX, you always want to capitalize it, spell it out in headlines and on first reference, and it's be bold, be proud, be experience obsessed. There are periods after each statement, and you want to capitalize bold, proud, experience, and obsessed, and there's no hyphen between experience and obsessed. So this is not grammatically correct or punctuationally correct. I don't even think that's a word, but I just made it up. However, it's well known in marketing that companies do this all the time. They do things for emphasis, and that's totally within the realm of business. It's accepted. However, if I'm capitalizing bold and proud, but you're not, it looks like somebody's doing it wrong. So that's why, as an organization, it's really important to have everybody on the same page, literally, of the style guide, page 4. I don't think that's the real one, but I'm guessing. And to all do it the same way. And just so you know, your style is not to use any acronyms or abbreviation in headlines, to just spell things out. Addresses. So this is something that the style guide often covers. And it's things like, if you have the street address, then you abbreviate avenue or street. If you don't, then you spell out avenue. If you have two streets, guess what? You spell out avenue, but you don't capitalize it. If you've got numbered streets, you're going to spell out 1st through 9th, but then you're going to use figures for 10th and above. And then when you've got compass points and a street address, you're going to abbreviate those. But if you don't have the street address, then you're going to write it out. And do not worry, you do not have to memorize this. This is the stuff that almost made me stop wanting to be a journalist, where I'm like, oh my God, what do we do? So this is just what you can look up whenever you're trying to write these things. It's like looking something up in the dictionary. Oh wait, I forgot how to spell this. Dates and times. Your style is to spell out the names of all days of the week and months. That means if you're saying the concert will be held on Tuesday, December 16th, this is what it's supposed to look like. It is not supposed to look like that. And notice also that there's no TH, like 16th or ST. You want to use numbers for time, except when it's noon or midnight. You want to use AM and PM lowercase with periods. And if you have a date, you have a time range, like something starts at a certain time and ends at another time, you don't need to use AM twice if it's within AM or PM. So like this. And you don't need to use the zeros either, 10 to 11 AM. Then you do use AM and PM because it changes. You don't write it like that. And it's daylight saving time, apparently not savings, and there's no hyphen. So here's a little tutorial on capitalization. You'd only capitalize these words when they're part of a proper name. So for example, if you said, I went to the Dells this summer, you would not capitalize summer. But if you said, I went to the Summer Olympics this summer, well, first of all, congratulations, and second of all, you would capitalize it. Same with board. If you're talking about a specific board, then you capitalize board as part of the name. It's called a proper noun. But if you're just referring to the board, you don't. Same with city, committee, hotel, lake, and room. And just one last thing on numbers. You want to spell out numbers 1 through 9. Use numerals for 10 and above. And always use numbers in these cases for time, dates, page numbers, room numbers, and temperature, just like this. Okay, so now we're going to take our quiz, which you have on your desk. And I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to take it. You can take it on your own, or you can talk with your neighbor about it. It's an open book test. And then we'll go over it together. And for those joining virtually, they have the okay. So if you're joining virtually, you can take it, you can print it out and take it like we are here on hard copy, or you can take it on your computer. Okay, can tell from some of the chatter that most people are done. I'll give you a couple more minutes for those wrapping it up, and then we'll go over it.
If you could share with the group at the appropriate time that during this break, you started investigating purpose and Grammarly for everyone. So more to come on that.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Okay, we're going to go through the answers now. Let's go back to number 1. What are the most important details in this email? Who wants to share what they circled? Raise your hand and I'll let you speak into my powerful microphone. Let's have someone over here. Want to share? Okay, go ahead.
I had the date of the meeting and the deadline.
You did what? I'm sorry?
I circled the date of the meeting and the deadline for the nominations.
Got it. Did anybody circle anything else? Okay. I feel like Phil Donahue, if anybody knows who that guy is.
At first I didn't, but then I circled, we plan to run the client conference on Thursday before the meeting begins.
Got it. And why did you circle that?
Because it says that the nomination, they want them to submit the nominations by the 23rd, and so that tells what the nominations are for.
Did everybody hear that? Okay, I agree. Anybody else have anything different? Or something to add? Okay, I gotta run back to my clicker. So yes, these are the things that I underlined, that we're having your employment practice group meeting. This is where it is. This is when it is. We're going to have these conferences the Thursday before. And then down here, I want you to nominate. Here's the deadline. And then I underlined opportunities for partners from across the region to meet new and existing clients. You don't have to, but this is a little bit the WIFM I talked about. Like, what's in it for them to do this? So that's why I kept that one in. What about number 2? What information do you want to cross out? We'll go over here, but not go in front of the screen. Okay. Does anybody want to share? Over here? Sure.
I crossed out, although it seems like a long way, that whole sentence there.
That's a good sentence to get rid of. Anybody else get rid of more phrases? Yeah, so pretty much, oh, go ahead.
We have always received very positive feedback, that whole sentence.
Right, kind of editorializing about, this is so great, you got to jump in. Right. Am I causing that, or is that, oh. I'm going to get my steps in. Okay.
This bifurcated into a lot of polysyllabic Latinates when they could have just said, plan early to register.
Right. Well, this is great. We're trying to get it more succinct. So here's what I crossed out. Pretty much everything else. Number 3, what's the call to action? What do they want the lawyers to do? Nominate clients, right. But how convenient that it's right at the end. It's not the inverted pyramid. Number 4, who wants to share how they rewrote it? Anyone? I'll go down the middle here. Dun, 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 dun. I have people not looking at me. Okay, that's all right. Anyone around in here want to share what they wrote? You guys in the back, come on. No? You will. Okay, I knew I'd find somebody. All right.
I just wrote, our next employment practice group meeting takes place on January 20 and 21 in Warsaw. Client conferences run the prior Thursday. It'd be even better to add an actual date there, perhaps. They provide an opportunity for partners to meet new and existing clients, nominate clients that would benefit from a client conference with the EEG partners by September 23.
Great. And it's probably, what, half as long as the original? Sounds great. Good work. Anybody else have anything different? Sure.
Should I read the subject line first? Or?
Oh, just read what you had in the email. And then
Okay.
we'll do the subject line.
We have an excellent opportunity for our partners to meet new and existing clients. Our employment practice group meeting is in Warsaw on January 20th to 21st. It's important to plan early.
Got it. Great. Yeah, you can start with what's in it for them. That's another way to do it. Did you want to share your subject line? We'll get to that one now. Did you want to share that one?
That was where I put the call to action, the client nominations for EEG partner conferences needed by September 23rd.
Great. Did everybody hear that? She put the deadline right in the subject line. How many of you already do that? Comme ci, comme ça. Sometimes. Okay. Right. Did anybody else write a different subject line they want to share? Okay, fine. I'll share mine. So this is how I wrote it, very similar to the gentleman in the back. And then these were the subject lines I did. One is the question. Client conferences at our employment retreat, who would you like to nominate? Or client conferences at our employment retreat, nominate clients by September 23rd. What do you think about? Do you think you're more likely to get a response if you put that right in the subject line? Do you find this helpful? Okay. Oops, I'm already giving you answers. All right. Okay, let's go to active and passive voice. Who has an answer for number 6? I'll go over to this side. Anyone want to answer number 6? Oh, sure.
An action was filed against Microsoft by the SEC.
Okay, so this one is about turning passive voice into active. So who is the subject of the sentence in this one? Who took the action?
The SEC.
Right. So how might we switch it to make them be the subject of the sentence?
The SEC filed an action against Microsoft.
Exactly, you got it. All right. Number 7. Who wants to answer number 7? How about, all right. Go.
Management will conduct an investigation of the employee's actions.
Yep, great. So this is one of those cases where you can see the problem with passive voice. You drop the subject, and now we don't know who conducts the investigation. What about number 8? Who has an answer for this one that they would like to share? You ready? Sure, okay. Here you
Companies in the healthcare industry endlessly face significant regulatory risks.
Say that one more time, I can hear you.
Companies in the healthcare industry face significant regulatory risks.
Okay. How might you make companies in the healthcare industry shorter?
Could just use healthcare companies.
There you go. Bingo. Thank you very much. See how there are just layers upon layers of how you can strip these down. Okay. So we have number 9 is next. Got that one. Human resources. Healthcare companies face significant risks. Number 9, we're taking out words. Who wants to put out the trash? Take a shot.
Sure. As a global company, we are aligned with the needs of the clients we serve.
Okay. Could you make...
Okay, let's go again. Okay. As a global company, we are aligned with the needs of our clients.
Yes, I love it. Did everybody hear that? You already hear? Okay. So much shorter and to the point. Number 10's a doozy, but how many of us are guilty of writing stuff like this? I mean, it just happens, right? Because when we talk, we use words and words and words and words. When you're on the page, you actually have the opportunity to take some of those out. That's the lucky part. So let's do that to number 10 because it is hurting my inner ear. Who would like to take a stab at this one? Do you want to try? You look like, yeah, no. Okay. Oh, we got some people, some willing participants down here. Okay.
We can help you achieve your goals. That's it.
We can help you achieve your goals. Got it. What did you have?
We have the experience to achieve your goals and deliver results for our clients.
Nice. See how much better it gets? Especially, and again, there's not a right or wrong answer. It's just about being effective and compelling. And one way of making it more succinct is slightly different than a different way. So yes, here is what I said. As a global company, we are aligned with the needs of our multinational clients. This one, we have the experience to help you achieve your goals and a track record of delivering results. Yes?
Going back to something you said earlier, though, in talking about multinational clients, wouldn't you want to give examples of who your clients are?
Yes, you would definitely want to do that. So the question was, going back here, if we're going to say, as a global company, we are aligned with the needs of our multinational clients, wouldn't you want to give an example or give some data to back that up? Exactly. So the purpose of this question was simply to just take out the wordiness. So we're going to get the claim right first. Then we're going to add in our amazing example that's going to knock your socks off. Okay. And who wants to do the bonus? Get a bonus point. What do you want to know more about? What do you think they should back up? I'll walk down this way again. Over here. Oh, here we go. Here, I'll give you the mic.
I circled the novel and precedent-setting issues, the numerous countries, and the difficult challenges.
Excellent. Does everybody see how if you had expanded upon those, you could make them even stronger? Yep. They do novel and precedent-setting issues. Can you give me an example? We are uniquely qualified. How many times have you heard that? And you're like, uniquely? Well, I know you're unique, but how are you qualified? Numerous countries, but we're not going to tell you any of them. We're just going to let you know that we're everywhere. All right. Well, that concludes the quiz. So we are on the home stretch. So I just want to leave you with a couple thoughts. Change is a process. When we learn something new, it takes a while to stick. Old habits die hard. So what I would suggest from this presentation is pick one thing, something that piqued your interest, something you're like, oh, I'm really guilty of doing that you feel motivated to change. And then you can take your handout that I gave you of the top writing tips and write your goal at the bottom of that and keep that up somewhere where you could see it. And so I'm just wondering if a couple people want to share what their one thing is. Like, what's the one thing you learned today that you feel like you really want to work on? And let's take one from each section. So I will go over here. Anybody want to volunteer? Great. Oh, we got a couple. Well, let's hear more. Here you go.
Just including more factual information about adding in numbers or percentages to emails or reports.
Got it. So tip number 5, you're going to be more specific. Got it. Okay. What about you?
Improving my subject lines for better results.
Improving subject lines. Anyone else over here while I'm here? Okay. What about this row down here? What's your one thing? You have one?
I would look at number 1. I can already see emails I could flip-flop because my pyramid's upside down.
Great. What's your name? Courtney. Okay, Courtney, everybody, you're on notice. She's going to work on getting to the point. Any email that's not to the point, you just send it right back to her. Have her do it over again. And what's your name? And Anastasia, if she's just being too, blanket claims, you have to tell her, back at this up. Okay, so what about, anybody else from this row want to share? No? Okay, I'm going over here. Yes, you have a goal.
My first goal is to burn down my English teacher's house for making me count words in essays. That's my first goal. Second goal is to slow down and check spelling and print it off and reread and slow down.
Perfect. What's your name? Jana. Jana is going to eat her vegetables. She's going to proofread. This is amazing. Anyone over here want to share their goal? You haven't said anything. Great.
I'd say definitely keeping my emails shorter, cutting out a lot of unnecessary words. I sent an email literally right before this that just had way too much. So I might follow it up with an apology.
What's your name? Charlie, we're so guilty. All of us are guilty of that. I really appreciate that. All right, so Professor Strunk would be so proud of you, omitting needless words. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I just want to leave you with one last thought. This is a quote from William Zinsser. He wrote one of my favorite books on writing called On Writing Well. It's going to be in your resource list. And he was a longtime journalist, and he taught nonfiction writing at Yale. And this is why he says that every first draft could be cut by 50%. And this is why. And I'll let you read it. Well, thanks so much. This is the resource list that you'll be getting when Nyla circulates the link. The other thing is I have some breaking news, and I'm not going to bury the lead, and that is that WCD is looking into getting Grammarly for you. So we have some lovely parting gifts for you. Well, thank you so much. I'll be here if you have any questions or you want to talk individually, but you've been a great group, and I really appreciate your attention. And please help me change the world one sentence at a time.
Okay, there we are. Thank you again for Lori. It was a great workshop. I know I learned several things that I need to do and change, and I'm going to work to do that. So I know we ran over. I really appreciate everyone for attending. If you I am going to send out all of the documents after the meeting, the workshop today, so you'll have everything. If you have any questions that we couldn't get to, just send them to me. I'll send them to Lori, and we'll get your questions answered. So thank you again. Have a great Wednesday.